To complete this challenge, I started off viewing the image in Bridge, and I did that by going up to the File menu and selecting Browse in Bridge. Now, since this image is a TIFF, I figured I would address those exposure issues right away inside of Camera Raw. So I right or Control clicked on the image and selected Open in Camera Raw. Now, as you look at the histogram, you can see this image is slightly underexposed with a lot of density down here near the shadows and the blacks. Also, there's this large spike up here in the highlights, so we'll want to address that as well. I dialed up the exposure by half a stop and then pulled a little bit of contrast out of the image by dialing the contrast down to -10. Now, to breathe a little more life into the shadows, I raised those up to +10, and we no longer have any clipping in our blacks. Now, to deal with this clipping in the whites, I pulled the highlights down to -25 and dropped the white levels down to -10. Notice that we no longer have any clipping in our highlights, and we can see a little definition here along this white edge of the tank. Now, for the white balance, this shot feels a little cold to me, so I bumped the temperature up to +8. And looking at this pattern in his shirt, it's looking a little too purplish magenta, so I rolled the tint down towards green to -10. And that seemed to help correct that a bit. Now, for the clarity, I softened the shot up just a little bit to -10. And then, since the colors in this image are already fairly strong, I dialed the vibrance and the saturation both back to -5. Now, if I toggle off my settings here, we can see where we started with, and here's how I corrected it. Now, with this step complete, I clicked on the Open Image button so we could bring this image over into Photoshop. Now, the first thing that I like to do when I bring in an image inside of Photoshop is to jump the background layer up to a new working layer, just in case I need to get back to my original. And I did that by selecting my background layer and then pressing Command-Option-J on the Mac or Control-Alt-J on the PC. Then I named this layer Working. Next, I grabbed my spot healing brush and then right or Control clicked on the image to set my brush up. I set the tip size to about 60 pixels and set the hardness up to 100%. Then hit Enter or Return to close that window. Then to zoom into my image, I pressed Command or Control 0 to fit my image to screen. Then I just started addressing some of these issues. I clicked on top of the splotch here to get rid of that. And after getting rid of this big splotch, I reduced the size of my brush with the left square bracket key a few times and just went on a mission to seek out all of these little dust splotches and simply clicked on each one all over the image. Now, for this crud on his arm, I went ahead and expanded my brush size a little bit using the right square bracket key and then clicked on there and then painted right over that one. Then I reduced the size of the brush again using the left square bracket key and continue painting out the splotches. You just need to be meticulous and work your way through the entire image. There's a little hair over here. I'll click and drag that out. And there's one more over here. And looks like I missed this one up here. And a little splotch right there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Next, I grab my crop tool and set the aspect ratio to 16:9. That will match the widescreen slide presentation format that this image is going to go into. I made sure that my overlay grid was set to rule of thirds. Then I trimmed in the crop ever so slightly and positioned it so that the left line aligns with this blue door here in the background. The lower left crossing of these lines aligns roughly with this knuckle, and then the upper right crossing aligns just below his eye. And this should help draw the viewer's eye around the image and have some nice leading lines and eye lines to direct their attention. Now, to lock in this crop, I simply hit Enter or Return. Now, knowing this image is going to be presented in a slide deck, overall, I think the image could use just a little more brightening added to it. So, with the working layer still selected, I came down to the bottom of the Layers panel and added a Brightness Contrast Adjustment layer. Then I dialed the brightness up to a setting of about 25 and closed the panel. And here's the final image, ready to be saved out as a Photoshop document and then compressed as a JPEG to be added into the slide presentation. Now we'll look at how to do that in later movies. For now, we're all finished. I'll click over here to the original image so we can see where we came from, and then click back to see where we ended up. Overall, it's quite an improvement. Great job.